because again, I'm expecting a lot more people, but
Yeah, yours on. I'm putting mine on.
yeah, I never go out without at least this, usually a ribbon. I got my bracelet. I got the whole going on. You know, it's the thing about the dog tag is that either people know about it, so they see it, and it's a little fist bump thing. It just says, this one says, bring them home now. And in Hebrew, it says, our heart is held captive in Gaza. And I think that what's so interesting about this is that, hey, Lori, is is that they chose to say halev, which means like our heart. It's not in the plural. And that's something like super, super important to understand about Israel today, is that it's very, very, very much like one heart and one soul at this point. So here's what we're going to do. I mean, it's 3:00. I want to be respectful of the time of those of you who showed up. So today I'm going to be running in the background some photos and videos. The really, really good ones are from the professional, probably. And the ones that look like a snapshot that a 3-year-old took is probably mine. Hey, Eric, nice to see you. So let me just start by turning on some.
Is that your nephew?
Huh?
Hmm?
Okay, somebody said something, but if you wish to maybe turn off your mics for now, and then listen when you have, I'm going to be doing question and answer at the end, which is going to be really question and answer about anything that you want to ask. So even if you have hard questions about like what's going on in Israel, or I heard a certain rumor, or this made me uncomfortable, or what did you see? What do you know about this? Whatever, about what happened on 10/7, about, hey, Pam, good to see you, about, politics, about everything. I'll answer all of your questions to the best of my ability. That being said, all of you are pretty familiar with how involved I am with this cause. I'm not going to pretend that I am like the world expert on this. But I certainly have a better understanding than most. This has been my cause for about, like, really hardcore for about 20 years now. So this is not like a cause du jour. This isn't something that started 7.5 months ago. I'm so glad to see so many of my pro-Israel friends.
Hi, Sean.
Hey, hey, Mom.
I did it.
My mom got on Zoom with camera and sound. That is a miracle in and of itself. Ronnie, thank you for pause.
Thank you, Ron.
Hey, Loretta, I'm so excited to see you there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I know that some people are more I am definitely one of those people. So I hope this isn't like very distracting, but I'm going to have different slideshows playing so that you could get a sense of the reality on the ground and what I experienced. So let us begin. So sorry, I made them go like pretty fast on the change because there's some videos interspersed, but it will give you a really good idea of Israel today. So I want to start out by talking about Tel Aviv, about my trip actually a month ago. So this is not, can you hear that sound? Can you hear the sound from the video? No? Good.
No.
Actually, it's down, but for some reason, it's still playing on this end. Okay, so sorry about that. So here's what you need to know. These are shots of Tel Aviv a month ago, just walking down Dizengoff. For you who are familiar with Tel Aviv, this is the main road in Tel Aviv. What you're looking at now is Dizengoff Square, a very iconic fountain that has been 100% sort of changed into a living memorial for hostages and for soldiers. One thing that I want you to note that's very interesting, and I know it's moving a little bit fast, but if you look at the stuffed animals that are all over, they're lions and they're lambs. What does that mean? It's a biblical reference that there will be peace on earth when the lion lies down with the lamb. And I really want to emphasize to anybody who is not super familiar with the reality of Israel is that this is truly, and regardless of what the media tells you, and I'm happy to answer any questions, really any questions, this is truly a nation that seeks nothing more than peace. And I know that right now this seems like some sort of a contradiction, but here's the fact. Sometimes, unfortunately, the only road to peace is going to come through war. We know this, we saw it, obviously everyone's making very close correlations to what happened in World War II, the bombing of Dresden, where, really 1 million innocent Germans were killed in the process of overcoming the Nazi regime. And we have to understand that what happened on 10/7 and the fact that Hamas is vowing to do this over and over again. This isn't my opinion. This is what they're saying in words. I think you can understand a distraught nation with these enemies at our gate, threatening for our eternal destruction, and how much of really an existential threat this is. Just to give you a little more context of what's going on here, this is one of the main little promenades in Tel Aviv, and you can see that they have all of the hostages listed on stickers across the benches where people walk and sit. What is the spirit in Israel? This is the question that I get the most often. And again, you see how this city has really come together. I mean, everywhere you look, keep in mind, they don't rip down hostage posters in Israel. This is so foremost in, there's Danny, that's my little sister, in people's minds, that there's no differentiation right now between what happened on 10/7 and today. Because something that many of you, most of you have been to Israel, and you understand this about the Jewish state. It's really a shared heart and soul. And it's very hard to understand that in America with all our identity politics of, am I a Black American? Am I a white American? Am I a Jewish American? Am I an Armenian American? Am I a Black American? Am I a African American? Go on with the list of Chinese Americans. So where's the cohesion? Let's try to think back to 9/11, which was on a relative scale minuscule compared to what happened at 10/7. And let's go back to 7.5 months after 9/11. And where was the nation's heart and soul? For all intents and purposes, it was sad history. 7.5 months on, the US wasn't still mourning the thousands of people who died that day. The US was not still vigilant about taking care of their families. And of course, there weren't hostages. Hostages change everything, right? Because we're talking about 132 humans in captivity, and these are everybody's loved ones, their friends, their families, their neighbors. I don't know a single person in Israel who doesn't know someone who either was kidnapped or killed. Personally, I don't know any of them other than I'm 1 degree of separation from many. One of my good friend's cousins was so horrifically injured in the war. He lost his eyes, his hands, and his ability to walk. My Aunt Roberta's cousin, her son is a Nova Festival survivor, and he was one of those who survived hiding in a pile of his friends' bodies. Okay. Yesterday, I found out that my friend Miri, who is a yoga instructor in Israel, her cousin was killed in the building that just collapsed in central Gaza. As you come in and out of Ben Gurion Airport right now, and I'm just showing one side so that you could get a better perspective. It's on both sides of a very long runway. You'll see that there are posters of every hostage being held. Of course, we know that many, if not most of them, unfortunately, are no longer alive. The best estimates that we have is that somewhere between possibly 18 and about 80 are still alive. These are all unconfirmed, though the IDF has a lot of information that has been disclosed to families, but not to the public, such as me. As much as I do have a lot of inside information because I'm in a lot of sort of briefing groups, I don't know a lot of the super secret information. You don't, but I can tell you, sorry, it was hard to leave walking by all these posters because it felt like I was abandoning a nation. Not that I'm saving a nation, but I do also want to mention as a side note, and I'll probably mention again, everybody is sort of, I know that my friends and family are so not active on social media like I am, and people are alwathis asking me why should I bother preaching to the choir? So I'm going to give you two answers. And the first, and again, this is just scrolling through Tel Aviv again, is that first of all, if you don't preach to the choir doesn't sing. So if everybody doesn't speak because everybody's afraid to speak, nobody speaks. And right now, the voice of Israel is definitely being squelched by the media and by social media. For those of you who are not social media savvy, but you have an account, just know that simply liking, commenting, and sharing posts helps the algorithm. Okay, if you're not familiar with algorithm, it means it's how often stuff gets shown. It doesn't even matter if you have a single friend on Facebook. When you like, comment, and share, it tells Facebook that people are liking, commenting, and sharing, and they give it to more people. And this is why it's important to amplify voices, whether it's mine, a lot of you are following Danny, my sister, or any of your friends. But I do want to reiterate, this is a country that has been devastated emotionally. It also is the most resilient nation I think you'll ever experience. It's hard to explain this confluence of complete, soul-crushing sadness and a total commitment to rebuilding, to bringing back our hostages, to healing the hostages and their families. And so this was an interesting poster that said it could have been you. I don't know if you saw my face reflected in that. But again, I just want to reiterate, wherever you go in Tel Aviv, these people have not forgotten. And they are very, very committed to keeping this alive. I'm going to leave the Tel Aviv for now. A lot of you know that I volunteered for a week, and I'm happy to talk about that if you have questions about that. It was an organization that provides free yoga retreats for soldiers who have PTSD. The particular retreat I went on was actually for a kibbutz families. So if you are interested in hearing more about that, feel free to ask. Okay, so the first night we got there, as many of you might know, was, sorry, Eric, do you have a question? You could unmute yourself.
No,
Oh, wait, sorry, hold on one second.
I do have a question, but
volume.
I thought you were done. But I do have a question. But do you want me to wait till the end?
You can ask a question, but I'm not gonna be done for a while.
No, the thing on the news that confuses me, a lot of times on the American news, they make a lot out of Israelis not liking Netanyahu, and then recently they have Benny Gantz saying that he's going to leave the government if there's no plan for Gaza, and then the second one is Gallant, who says that he's not happy with the way the war is going. It seems like in a unity government, there's not a lot of unity, and I was wondering if that's an American take on it or if that's true.
Eric, I know that so Eric, you and I met at Stand With Us or ADL?
Stand with us.
Stand With Us. So Eric, for those of you who know, is an activist like I am. And I know you're very up on things. So I'm going to do the best I can to answer that, because that's a tough question and not something I learned in Israel. The answer is, I hate to say this out loud, but so keep in mind, my community tends to be the yoga community, the pretty far left community. There is a tremendous amount of frustration with Netanyahu. From what I understand, the country is pretty much split 50-50 on this. Personally, I think he has the hardest job in the world. Now, as to the rifts in the government, I think that, I also hate to say this out loud, Israel is simultaneously the smartest and sometimes dumbest country at the same time. And I say this with all love. I love this nation, but now is not the time for the unity government to start having infighting. Now, that being said, the war in Gaza, as everybody knows, is extraordinarily complex. The complications made so much deeper by the pressure from the United States. In my estimation, a lot of the unrest in the unity government is Netanyahu is basically willing to say Israel will stand alone if we need to. They're starting to create their own defense capabilities, so they no longer have to rely on America. Sadly enough, it seems that Biden will be the last pro-Israel Democratic president. And that's an opinion. And I know certain people on this call, and I'm not going to say I disagree, are thinking in your head, if Biden is pro-Israel, who needs enemies? But at his heart, there's a very, very complicated time. So Netanyahu is very much like in the Ben Gurion camp of, if we need to stand alone, we'll stand alone. And also, as long as we know we're fighting a just war, we don't need anybody else to validate that. I think that there are other rational actors within the government who, I can't say what is right and what is wrong, but who believe we can't go alone. Israel is a tiny little state that can't afford to be a pariah among nations. And there's so much pressure from the Biden administration to provide, for example, a plan for the day after that, that certain elements are like, well, we need to do whatever America wants us to do. We just do. What's our future without America? And the truth is, I don't know. I can't imagine Israel's future without America. So I think that that's what's complicating a lot of things. There's also, you gotta keep in mind that emotions are emotions, and governments are not devoid of emotions. And so there's a lot of policy, like, for example, which is more important right now, releasing the hostages or destroying Hamas? And it's a bit of a chicken and an egg scenario right now. And it depends on, a combination of intelligence and emotion. And I think that this is where a lot of the rifts are coming from. But the general public, if you look at the polls in Israel, the majority of the public, like a vast majority, is still supporting Netanyahu and is still supporting the war effort completely. Granted, polls can be inaccurate, as we know. You can close the door, Brad. As we know, there's also Harvard-Harris polls out there that say that 80 to 82% of America still supports Israel in this war, but that's also just not what we see in the media as, you know, reflected at all. So it's very hard to get an absolute pulse on who thinks what. But my prayer is that this unity government at least lasts until the end of the war. Keep in mind, guys, it's also hard to finish a war when the United States tells you you're not allowed to finish a war. And so this war could have been over a long time ago if there weren't this like cat and mouse game being played between Biden and Netanyahu, to be honest. I'm going to leave the political analysis at that, and this is just my own thoughts anyway, so that and a cup of tea will get you a cup of tea. So that being said, I'm going to keep talking. If possible, to save your questions for the end, that would be ideal so that you're not here for the rest of your life, because I have a tendency to, I think that like the best comment I've ever gotten on my yoga YouTube channel was the yada, yada, yada is really strong on this one. And it is. So let me go on. So we arrived. For those of you who aren't super familiar, I went on the World Jewish Congress Changemakers mission to Israel. The intention was to help educate people on the reality on the ground right now in Israel, particularly for social media influencers. So again, some of these photos are mine, some of them are professional. You'll probably be able to tell the difference. We arrived on Yom HaShoah. Well, not really Yom HaShoah, Erev Yom HaShoah. If you don't know what the Shoah is, that is Hebrew for the fire, the Holocaust. So Yom HaShoah is the Israeli Holocaust Remembrance Day. For anyone who sort of follows this, like International Holocaust Remembrance Day is actually in January. But it's very interesting that Israel has its Yom HaShoah a week before Memorial Day, okay? And their Memorial Day is soldiers and victims of terror, which is one day ahead of Yom HaAtzmaut, which is Independence Day. It's important to know that everything Israeli is about the bitter and the sweet. We just finished Passover, right? And it's all about like the bitter, like we take the bitter herbs with the haroset, the sweet. Everything in Israel follows the same pattern. Every sad holiday is followed immediately by a celebration. And just so you know, I'm going to show you some very uplifting things at the end of all this, but what you're going to see for the next few minutes is not going to be very uplifting. So for Yom HaShoah, for the evening, we had a Holocaust survivor speak with us. There are about 245,000 survivors left on Earth today. Which means, I mean, listen, most of them are in their 90s or older. We in our very short, like next 5 to 10 years are going to see a world without a single Holocaust survivor. I'd like to say that's sad, but the ones who are still alive have lived 90 or 100 years. So halavai, they've had good lives. They are survivors. They rise from the ashes. But the problem is that we can't let their stories die with them. And we've seen so much Holocaust denial over the last 20 years of social media that there's literally like a large percentage of youth today who don't believe the Holocaust even existed, which is frightening. We're seeing the like rewriting of history. In fact, what got me super active about Israel and the Jewish cause in the first place was when I was at Cornell, who's done a pathetic job during all this, that there was a man named Bradley Smith who took out a full-page advertorial in the Cornell Daily Sun, meaning he paid for what looked like an article denying the Holocaust. And this was the first, this was 1992. I mean, this was a long time ago and it was already happening. What's even more frightening, however, is that the revisionist history on 10/7 began on 10/7. And what's even scarier is that the evidence was shot by Hamas themselves. It's their own cameras. They were celebrating it. They didn't try to hide it. They didn't pretend it didn't happen. And yet go online and, you know, try commenting on anything on the, like the state of Israel on social media and see what the answers are that you get back. That this whole thing is made up, and or that the IDF actually killed everybody, or we're watching this in real time unfold. And this is like our future in a post-reality society where facts and truth just simply don't matter. They just don't matter. So the reason why this mission and all other missions that are going on in Israel right now are so important is because we need as many people as possible to be able to give testament to what has unfolded and what is actually there. People have asked me how long, like Billy, I mean, you're looking at Billy and people are like, are they going to make it into a museum? The answer is no. And for the same reason as I started this, which is to say Israel is about resilience. Billy is literally on the Gaza border and they are already rebuilding. The community has every intention of coming back. They are a true kibbutz in the sense that everyone there is a family. So we were in Billy on Yom HaShoah. Now I'm going to show you, this was our moment of silence. I'm not sure if all of you know, but during Yom HaShoah and also some other holidays, including Memorial Day, there is a siren that sounds literally throughout the entire country. There's not an inch of Israel that doesn't get this siren. And every single person in Israel stops what they are doing, stands up, and stands in silence for a minute or 2 minutes. Some of them are 2 minutes. And I've witnessed this more than once now. It was very powerful to be at Billy when this happened. I've been just in Tel Aviv, where everybody stops their car, gets out of their car, stops their meetings, stop their lunches, stop their conversations, stop walking down the street. The whole country comes to a stop. And again, keep in mind that every single person, well, almost every person in Israel is a veteran. How many veterans do you guys know in America? I mean, besides my grandfather, and Greg Cowan, who is an old friend of ours, and some friends I've met on social media, very few. We're not a nation of service. You know, Kennedy had asked, ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. This is a nation that does for its country. Now, what you're looking at is the aftermath of Billy. You'll notice that there are bullet holes riddling all of the walls. And if you notice, one thing that you'll find very interesting, if you're paying attention, is where is all the blood? I mean, again, let's talk about revisionist history because, well, what? Like all the photographs that came out just after 10/7 had blood everywhere. Babies' beds with blood, walls with blood, floors with blood, pools of blood. You go to Billy, there's not a drop of blood anywhere. Now, let me explain why that is, because that's going to seem like, well, clearly Israel made this up. And you could just see this was a very, very thriving community. And you see that they've put out posters on houses where that's Emily Hand, wherever someone was killed or kidnapped. Now, where is all the blood? The answer is this. And we met with the head of Zaka. For those of you who are not familiar, Zaka are the people who go in after a disaster and collect the bodies. I don't even know how else to say it. In Jewish tradition, when somebody is buried, they're supposed to be buried as complete as possible. And I'm not going to say that I agree with this, but Orthodox Jews do not donate their organs for that reason, traditionally, because there's this thought that when the Mashiach comes, that whatever's in your body is what's going to be in your body, and you want to have all your body parts. So Zaka actually goes in, collects, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disgusting, but every bit of skin, bone, ash, blood of any human being that they can find. And even the rags with the blood on them are buried with whatever DNA, identified body parts. I even know how else to say this. So they clean the walls and the floors of every human ash, every drop of blood. And even though, you walk into a room, I'm going to call it a room, and this says kibbutz Billy, and you notice like, well, if so-and-so died in this room, there's a poster saying like what happened. Again, where's the blood? So that's the answer. Something else to know about kibbutz Billy and all the other kibbutzim. And as you're watching this, if questions come up, please save them for later. And I'm happy to address like what you're looking at. But that in kibbutz Billy, there were a lot of people. This is the medical center here that was destroyed, monuments everywhere, messages everywhere, but men in particular, but also some women who had nothing but a handgun, a pistol. Some of them were in the reserves. A few of them had one machine gun maybe. And that might be disturbing to you. I'm all for gun control. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. I don't even think kids should have toy guns. That's how I feel about guns. But it's a different reality in Israel. But these men ran out to defend their neighbors with just one gun. And they were all, every single one of them was killed. The ones who went to defend their people because they only had 5 bullets or whatever it was, but they wanted to do what they could do. Again, you can see the carnage. Look at the roofs that on top of the destruction, the buildings were burned, decimated. I didn't really take pictures of the houses that are still standing, but this is a very, very idyllic community. And this is what is left of it. So just so you know, again, in the moment of hope, there are 100 people still living on kibbutz Billy. I don't know that I would feel comfortable living there right now, but it's mostly older people because there's no services. The schools are closed, the stores are closed, everything is closed, but home is home. And so it's hard to imagine your whole community being destroyed, but imagine like going to work tomorrow and finding out that 70% of the people at your work were killed or kidnapped the day before. What do you do? And it's a serious question. What do you do? And the answer in Israel is we continue on. It's what they do. You see the pins that everybody is sort of wearing, like a pin, a dog tag, a bracelet. Again, this is just so universal, but of course this is mostly my own delegation here, so surreal. Okay, let me move on to the next. Whoops. Okay, so next we went to the Nova Music Festival, or the site of the Nova Music Festival. As you know, this was it was a peace festival. It's literally what it was. It was people gathered to celebrate peace and the environment. It was about climate and taking care of the world. And look at these faces. These are not masked terrorists who, oh, okay, that cut off. Oh, this is weird. Hold on. This is not supposed to be in here. Oh, well, whatever. We'll just keep this going. These are not mass terrorists. These are your friends and these are your family. If you look, hold on. If you look in I want you to, many of these people you'll recognize if you've been active in this, situation. But I want you to note, for example, right here in the bottom center.
Hey, Shana, we're not seeing your
See a
screen
man
anymore.
with a green shirt on. So as some of you may have recognized, this young girl has severe cerebral palsy. And ever since she was young, her father wanted her to have, and autism, the best possible life experience. And he would take her to all these festivals and raves all around.
Shana, are you sharing your screen?
And
Shana?
Hamas killed them. This is a young woman, 19 years old,
You can't see what you're
wheelchair bound. And they thought that would be a good person to murder.
You can't see.
Shana?
We have to remember, we simply have to remember how this all began.
We can't see the screen, Shana.
The
I don't think she can
so
hear us.
At the site of the festival, too, most of you have seen, these are all the people who were murdered, and they like a poster of each person, and different people put, you know, write on their posters or put little gifts. Of course, there are some quote unquote celebrity hostages such as Hirsch, and you'll see that this is going to finish off with Shani Luke. That'll be at the very end of this video.
What did you do?
As you might know, her body was recovered 3 days ago. They did know that she was murdered on 10/7,
Shana?
but then she was kidnapped, taken.
She's muted, everyone.
Yeah.
Body hostage to
We can hear each other. She can't
Gaza,
hear
where
us.
they celebrated in the streets.
I just tried to
and
call
spat
her
on
and she
dead
didn't
body.
answer.
How did we know she was dead? Well,
Grace.
she was broken in pieces, lying in the back of a truck. And for those of you who don't know, the photo of Hamas abducting her dead body was named the photo of the year by like one of the worldwide press organizations, which some people say, okay, good, because it shows the reality of what happened. But it also raises a lot of questions of how do you think the AP and Reuters got real-time documentation? Oh, you can't see my screen?
No.
Oh. Oh my goodness.
Whoever did that's a genius.
Ah,
Thank you, that's
wow,
me.
you missed everything.
Well done, Eric.
Thank you.
Ah, darn it.
Yay!
Now?
We need a tech guru to handle it because the rest of us are sitting here.
Sorry,
What the hell did
what?
we do?
You have us all muted.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry
Make
about
it
that.
wider.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so anyway, you're gonna catch the end of this video anyway, where you could see Shani Luke. Again, there's some people who say, you know, that was disgusting, but it also says it's an important testament to understand what exactly happened. So, right, so I forgot what I was saying about her. What was I saying? Huh? Yeah, that she was kidnapped. So anyway, she was, oh yeah, the photo of the year, that's right. So there's a lot of questions, and quite honestly, they're answered questions of how did AP and Reuters get real-time documentation of the atrocities of 10/7? And if you haven't asked that question, the answer is because they were embedded with Hamas. And this is now documented, or was documented many months ago, and very, very upsetting, because if the media knew that 10/7 was going to happen before it happened, it probably could have been avoided. So I believe that was Hirsch right there. If you guys aren't familiar with Hirsch, his arm was blown off, and he recently showed up in a video, so they consider that hopefully proof of life, but they have no real time or date stamps on any of the documentation that they have. The person who showed us around was a survivor. What he told us was that every day has been 10/7. It's been relentless, and there has not been a moment or a night of sleep where this has not repeated over and over and over in his mind. What he and a lot of survivors were telling us is that it is helping them to cope with what happened by revisiting it, by talking about it, by sharing it, because again, there are a lot of people who don't even believe it, but it's very important that it's just like talk therapy, that people are able to connect on. A couple more things that he said, and I'd say the thing that was the most, again, there's Shani Luke right there, not that here. She's the one whose body was recovered this week, who was the photo of the year. And for those of you who read Hebrew or don't read Hebrew, this basically says Vezachor, which means and remember. So many handmade monuments everywhere. So what our guy told us that was like so indicative of, and this is the bomb shelter where a lot of people were hiding. Again, there's been a lot of sort of cleanup, but the terror of people hiding under dead bodies to survive, hiding in cacti. My guy was telling us that he and his friends were hiding in cactus and they were afraid to move, to even like call for help on their phones because they thought if they moved, it would be the end. But what was so remarkable about what he said, and that I heard from so many people, was that ultimately he still, like, it was a very Anne Frank moment. Ultimately, what he believes is that we need to find the love, and we need to find the peace, and we need to find the respect for all other human life so that we can find a space for coexistence. And I have to say that this, even the most right-wing people in Israel, this is how they think and this is how they feel. The difference being that the right-wing people generally don't think that right now there's really a partner for peace. So this is Samuel Dressel. He's from South America. He's reading Kaddish for us, or for the hostages. But ultimately, everybody is committed to the concept of finding peace with our neighbors. And if you don't already know, and I hope you already know, a vast majority of the people who were murdered, the 1,200 plus people who were murdered, and don't forget that there were many thousands more who were severely, severely injured that day, were peace activists. And when I say activists, I mean active. I don't just mean they thought good things. I don't just mean they cared. We're talking about people who would drive Gazans back and forth across the border so they could get medical care, or who arranged convoys of aid and the like. People who, hired these Gazans in their own homes because the economy in Gaza is so bad that they could earn more money in Israel. These people who took a lot of these people into their homes and who then went on to surveil the people who were helping them and provide that information so the very same people could be slaughtered. This man not that man, that's his girlfriend actually. They were just such like peace-loving people. And something I want to say before I forget is we met with the head of Zaka, which I told you about, which is the organization who has the worst job in the world of cleaning up the human remains. He's an Orthodox Jew. And if you guys don't know, Zaka shows up everywhere. They go to Turkey when there was an earthquake, an avowed basically enemy of Israel. They were in Haiti. They came to New Orleans. They come everywhere. And so does Israel. And what he said is, we're not here to care for the Jews. We're here to take care of the humans. And he said, which I found interesting, that they treat everybody exactly the same way, whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, the same thing of making sure that the dignity of the life lost is maintained. Okay, so instead of stopping share, I'm just going to close this out. Oh no, can I close this out? No. Okay, let me stop share for a second. So that was Nova. And next, okay, so this is actually something that is, again, a highlight. Let's go back to some of the happy things that happened. This was very, very interesting. So we went to, this is called Achim, Rest for Brothers. And what is amazing about this? Okay, so this is a rest stop that is very close to, so just so you know, Berlin Nova and what we're going to do next, which is the car graveyard, are all very, very, very close together, like a few miles apart. But it's sort of in the middle of nowhere, right? And so this was a rest stop, and there are a number of these around Israel right now where there's not a lot of photos here, so it's going to be very repetitive, where soldiers could come, rest, eat for free anytime, day or night, 24/7. They're serving thousands and thousands of soldiers. And here's what's amazing about this rest stop. Amazing. And again, let's get back to the spirit of Israel, because it's so hard to understand without witnessing this. There is no coordination effort at this rest stop. None. But every single day since 10/7, people show up with the food, with the pots, with their hands to serve. 24/7. 24/7, there are people there who just show up without being asked, just what can we do to help? And that's the big question in Israel right now, is just what can we do to help? And so I'll tell you a story that I told Tammy, actually, which was pretty amazing. So this guy is the leader guy, and he was telling us, again, like, there's no coordination even required. It just happens miraculously on its own. And he told us that one day somebody called him out of nowhere and said, we have 450 hamburgers. Could you use them? I mean, of course, like, he's like, of course, yes, please, give us the hamburgers, right? The very next day, now 450 is a pretty random number, I think everyone will agree. The very next day, somebody else called him and said, I have 450 hamburger buns. I'm not sure if you could use them, but I'd like to drop them off. Not 451 or 412. And then there was another story that there was a soldier who had come who was feeling sick, and somebody gave him like some Advil, whatever it was. And they don't collect medical supplies. They don't have a wish list. There's just none of that going on. But this guy was like, I think you need something more than Advil. From what you're telling me, it sounds like you have strep throat. And he goes back into the shed. The shed is behind there. And there was like strep throat medicine sitting there. Like, not over the counter. Somebody had brought strep throat medicine and it just happened to be there. And he's like, I don't even have to ask. I just know it's going to be there. If someone needs something, it's just there. So, oh, that worked. Okay. So that's Shuva Achim. We had lunch there. We didn't eat their food. We ate our own food, but just a beautiful show of again, unity. For those of you who are not familiar, there were over 2,000 cars that were either destroyed or had to be abandoned, or the people who drove them were abducted or killed, that had to be recovered, so to speak. Now, this is the Tacoma graveyard, car graveyard, which for right now at least is intended to be some sort of permanent memorial exhibit, but they don't know what they're going to do with all these cars that were so burnt out so that they don't just crumble. You'll see that there's a huge wall of cars. Those are the ones that were burnt, often with people inside of them. In front, they had, each of these had a story, which I'm not going to get into all the stories, but what you can see, for example, as you watch, is that a lot of the gas tanks have bullet holes in them because they were explicitly being shot at to explode the cars. As well, they shot into the motors to try to kill the motors. This is a perfect example of a gas tank, though it didn't blow up. So going back to the concept of Zaka, if you can believe it, every single car in this car graveyard had to be cleaned of every remnant of any human being before it could be retired, so to speak. I don't know what other word to say. That means that this pile of cars that you see behind, and cars like this, where terrorists came up and shot families at point blank range through their windows as they tried to escape. I mean, that by the way was actually a pile of motorcycles, Hamas motorcycles, that just like a blob of nothing right now. But that each of the cars, now these are in back, you see the thousands and thousands of cars that just happen to be recovered, but cars like this, for example, ambulance like this that was found with 16 people inside. Zaka had to come and clear every single, again, ash, every drop of blood, including every car in that wall that surrounds this monument. Look at this car here. I mean, there's just nothing left. This was a guy who was trying to save children and ran into a hole because he was shot in the head while driving. You could see how these cars, I mean, are decimated. And just really, really devastating to imagine the stories. Again, we heard the stories of the ones that are in the immediate like front part, but these stories were truly incomprehensible. To try to escape something like this and wind up in the worst of situations. So the next day we went to Hostage Square. I'm going to skip that night because that is one of the highlights that I'm going to come back to. Hostage Square and the Hostage Forum. Now, the Hostage Family Forum, for those of you who don't know, is for people currently in captivity as well as those who are released. Again, the families of the people who had hostages released have not stopped, because their family, they are still in captivity. Even if their actual family is home, they are still in Hostage Square every day. Now, we went early. Israel is not like an early place, so there was like no one there yet. But again, this will give you an idea of, again, it was these monuments that people have set up. They have a timer of how many days, minutes, seconds, since the attacks began. But people just put up, I think some of these might have been State of Israel, but I think it's mostly just people that put up all sorts of memorials. This is a bomb shelter that you could see in the background here. And Achshav means now. And so there's a very personal feeling to everything about the hostages. This is right by the Supreme Court. So I was like a judge. This is a room full of Orthodox women who are davening, praying. This is the bomb shelter. And you could see all these people who have just written messages of love and support everywhere. This is everywhere. This isn't just Hostage Square. And so on a normal day, there are many, many people there having speeches or protests or whatever else. Some of you might have seen yesterday Adon Golan performing here, her song that for Eurovision was called Hurricane. It was actually called October Rain, but Eurovision said that was too political and she's not allowed to say anything about hostages, so she had to change the words. But yesterday she performed for many thousands of people here at Hostage Square with the original lyrics. Now, I have to say, back to the happy, before I was just about to get on my plane ride home as she was performing. And for those of you who didn't see it, I mean, the dignity and the grace that she carried herself with as the audience went crazy booing her and saying horrible things to her and yelling at her. And she was such a rock star. Guys, she came in 5th place in Eurovision despite all the boycotts, all the anti-Israel, blah, 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 blah. And she won the popular vote. But the judges did not see it that way. You could see that this table for missing hostages, you could see how it changed from really nice place settings to sort of this post-apocalyptic. You'll notice, a lot of stuff for the B buses in particular, of course, probably the most heartbreaking of all the stories on so many levels. I mean, everybody knows about Kfir and Ariel, the 2 youngest hostages who are still in captivity, for 7.5 months now. Their mother, Shiri, and their father, Yarden, who is separate from them. In the most horrific of tortures, we have no confirmation of anything, but they told Yarden, the father, while filming him, that his wife and children have been murdered. And they thought that would be a fun thing to live stream on, whatever, Hamas terror or whatever. Horrifying to imagine. Now, these are pictures of the hostage family members who spoke with us. He has 2 sons. He's from Argentina. I'm going to fast forward because this is probably very long. He had 2 sons, and the other two women, these 2 women, one of them is the one in red, is the daughter of the Lifshitzes. Oded, her father, is still in captivity. Her mother, Miriam, I believe, was released in the hostage deal. So this is a woman very much caught between these 2 worlds. The other woman still has multiple family members in Gaza. She did not tell us who she is. We don't know who her family members were because I guess it's a sensitive issue. I did not get the sense that she was a B-boss, but I'm not sure who she was. Her message was very, very, very angry, very frustrated that no matter what, we need to bring home all the hostages this minute, end of story, end the war, do whatever we need to do. And as you probably know, there's been a huge rift among the hostage families about this as well, because a lot of the hostage families are also saying we need to finish this war or there's going to be thousands and thousands more. And it's a very sad and desperate situation. I don't know how these people stay as calm as they do, but it's terrifying and it's heartbreaking. And the man who was talking to us from Argentina, his son lived at Nir Oz, I believe, and his other son was just visiting him. He didn't even live there. And now he has 2 sons that are held in captivity, and he has 0 information about their whereabouts, doesn't know anything. The interesting thing about Oded, however, who was Lifshitz, who was still in captivity, was his daughter said that he's a peacemaker. Again, he's one of the people who was helping people with medical care, that he is also fluent in Arabic, and that somebody who saw him in the tunnels said that he was really taking an active role in keeping other hostages calm and sort of holding it all together. My hope from that assessment is that hopefully, even though he's 85 years old, I believe he's the second oldest. I know that Shlomo is the oldest. He's 86, but I believe Oded is somewhere between 83 and 85, and hoping, of course, for the best. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about a few more things, and in the background, this was really quite, again, remarkable. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but I'll just have it sort of in the background. In the Tel Aviv Museum, they had a video playing that sort of tells the story of 10/7 without showing anything gory, without showing any like actual hostages or anything like that, but it was just a really beautiful slideshow. I'm just going to have this playing in the meantime. It didn't save my edits, I see. I don't know why, but so anyway, I think that maybe while this is playing, I will answer some questions, and then I want to end off on a very high note. So why don't we start? Tammy, do you want to unmute yourself? Do you have a question? Tammy, do you have a question? That's to unmute. Okay, let's see what's in the chat. Okay. I don't have time. Thank you, Brittany, for adding some links for everybody. Amazing. Don't think you're screen sharing. Okay, got that. 4 o'clock by Adolfo. Okay. Do we have any questions? Tammy, do you have a question? No? Okay. Anybody have any questions that I can answer? You could just unmute yourself or raise your hands.
You were pretty thorough.
Yeah.
You were very thorough, Shana.
Shana, this was terrific. Thank you so much for sharing all of this.
Thank you, Eric. Two Erics. Do you have any questions? Tammy, did you have a question? Thank you, Eric. I appreciate your showing up.
Of course.
Wait, hold on 1 second. Tammy, I can't hear you. I know Tammy knows how to have Zoom. So guys, those of you who, and nobody here knows Tammy. So Tammy is my partner in Torah. Guys, this is really cool. And I'd love to share information with you if you're interested, that there are so many organizations online that are matching people with soldiers, with hostages. Of course, I'm matched with all of them, but I'm also matched with like really one of the most wonderful souls I know here. I look forward every week to my conversation with Tammy. I hate when it ends. I'll be in the middle of like an insane day and I'm like, it's time for Torah with Tammy. I actually call it Tammy with tea because I always have tea with her. But she's been such a light for me. And we talk about Israel, we talk about Torah, and we always say a prayer for the soldiers and the personal soldiers that we know who are healing. So if anybody's interested in getting involved with that, let me know and I will happily send you the link. Tammy.
I just wanted to say, no, this was wonderful. This was so thorough and so comprehensive. My daughter Ariella is also on the chat at some point. I don't know if she's available to speak or not, but she and I went this week to the Nova exhibit in Manhattan. And it covered pretty much a lot of what you've shared. And it's heartbreaking, but it's so important that there be some, we have to bear witness is what I say. And it's just horrific. And you've done an amazing job. And thank you so much for sharing all of this with all of us. I look forward to sharing happier, more positive experiences together with all of you. So thanks, Shana. This was terrific.
Thank you, Tammy. So one of the conversations that Tammy and I have had over and over and over again is this concept that in Judaism and probably, I assume also in Christianity, that God commands us that we must live in joy, and sort of like how to find joy in times of extraordinary sadness. And we've really delved deeply into that. I think that's the topic we talk about the most. But it sure helps to have like a friend who holds that same space. So thank you, Tammy.
Jan, I have a question.
Yeah.
So in the US, as you know, there's these quote protesters at colleges and so forth. I call them the useful idiots. Anyway, the question I have is, what do the Israelis think of what's going on in these colleges in the US? I was just curious what their thoughts are.
It's a good question. And by the way, most of you are on my Facebook. I encourage you to either use the link that I put on Facebook or go to the Sam Harris Making Sense podcast about the protests on campus. I've never heard a better or more rational explanation of what's going on. And yeah, if you've heard it, I would say that plus he has another Making Sense podcast, which is like 5 reasons why Israel is the moral player or whatever it is in this war. Probably the 2 best podcasts.
What's his name again?
It's Sam Harris, and it's Making Sense, and it's one of the top like links on my Facebook if you just go on my Facebook page. But to answer your question, Eric, and I think like the feeling in Israel about the protests on our campus is complete and utter confounding. Like the feeling in Israel that I think any like really involved pro-Israel person in America is feeling is nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. There's not a single like other example in history of a people being the victims of such a horrific massacre and then the world rising up against them. Could you imagine after George Floyd, which was one person who was not killed deliberately? I can argue, you know, it was terrible what happened to him. It was police brutality. He was a hardened criminal who happened to be killed, let's say, in this process. That's one person. What did the world do? It took to the streets and said, we need to right this injustice. And the whole world changed that day for the better, right? So everything then became about inclusivity and kindness and equal rights and you know, just like, oh my God, like it was a wake-up call, like, wow, what have we been doing all this time? We need to change this. Could you imagine if after George Floyd, the world rose up and said, yes, let's kill all the Black people? Can you imagine? I mean, it sort of sounds funny or offensive or stupid, whatever it is. That's the feeling in Israel. Like nobody can wrap their heads around what's going on in the world except for one thing. Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hate. I'm not saying this as a Jew. I'm saying this as a fact. It's just a fact. And the fact that more than 50% of all hate crime in America, for example, before 10/7 was already against the Jews, including after 9/11. Do you know that after 9/11, there was still more than 10 times more hate crime against Jews than Muslims? Like this whole like false parody of like anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And I won't get started on the fact Islamophobia doesn't mean hate, it means fear of. Okay, so it doesn't even pretend to be the same thing. But after 10/7, anti-Semitic incidents in America went up by 360%. Like, wrap your head around that. 1,200 people were massacred, women raped, people beheaded, 250 hostages taken, and worse. And hate crime goes up 360% against the Jews. I have to be honest, like whatever we're feeling as humans in America about like this, like it's hard to wrap your head around in Israel. It's impossible, except for that they're used to it. I hate to say it. They're used to it. They're used to anti-Semitism around the world. They just are. Any other questions that I can answer for you about anything that I went over or didn't go over today?
John, I have something.
Yeah.
What's happening with the 80,000 people in the north that are being bombarded by Hezbollah? Where do they live and who cares about them now?
I'll start with the easy one. Who cares about them is Israel, and hard stop. Everybody is so concerned about the people in Rafah who, by the way, have been brought to safety by the IDF. There's no other military on earth that protects the enemy the way, but nobody is talking about the well over 100,000 Israeli refugees that can no longer live in the north or the south. Now, that being said, where are they? They're mostly either in the Dead Sea, not in the Dead Sea. That would be sort of sad and scary. They're either in the Dead Sea resorts or in Tel Aviv hotels. Some of them are with family members. Could you imagine being displaced from your house for 8 months and none of these people had any concept of when they're going back? Now, my guess is there are some people on this call who don't even know that that's happening. Why? Because again, hard stop. Only Israel cares. It's not a part of the story. Now, here's what's going to happen with Hezbollah, and it's very, very horrifying. For those of you who don't know, Hezbollah is Hamas times 100, times 1,000. I mean, Hamas is literally child's play compared to Hezbollah. Keep in mind that there's an arms blockade on Gaza, right? A lot of arms still get through because they're smuggled in, mostly through Egypt. But for the most part, the weapons that Hamas has are like handmade missiles and stuff, like they make them. Hezbollah has the most advanced technologies from Iran, okay? Yeah, from Iran, and they have somewhere in the vicinity of 170,000 guided high capacity missiles aimed at Israel. So what does that mean? It means no one in the north is going home until Hezbollah is dealt with. Okay, so we have two choices. In effect, if we don't go back, then we have ceded the north of Israel to Hezbollah. Right? I mean, if we can't go into our own territory, then how is it our territory anymore? Or territory, you know what? I could stop the share right now. Territory has to be won. And so, unfortunately, war with Hezbollah at this point is considered to be inevitable. Hezbollah has 100% refused to come to the negotiation tables. And when I say negotiation, that includes actually upholding the agreement that they already have to maintain, I think it's a 10-kilometer border from Israel, so that there's sort of like a DMZ there, which they are not respecting. So what is going to happen in a war between Hezbollah and Israel? It will be unfathomable destruction on both sides, beyond far, far, far beyond anything that anybody has ever seen or that anybody who's not familiar can even begin to imagine. By all accounts, there will be hundreds of thousands of deaths in Israel, not 1,000, not 2,000, hundreds of thousands, and Lebanon will be wiped off the face of the earth. I hope that nobody wants that, and Israel has always tried its best and is trying its best to reach a diplomatic solution. Unfortunately, thanks to, like, France has pretty good ties with Lebanon and are not putting any pressure on them, just like no nation is putting any pressure pretty much on anybody right now other than Israel to resolve just about anything. So yeah. That's where the people in the north are, and it's a very sad and semi-hopeless situation right now. Does anybody else have any other questions I can answer?
Shana, I don't know if there's a thought that Gaza, after we clean out Rafah in the south, will be over. But the question is, if the Gaza situation ended, would the North, would Hezbollah and Israel still be trading fires, or do you think that would become a quieter situation?
No, 100% when Hamas is over is probably when Hezbollah war is going to begin.
War
Right
will
now,
begin.
yes. right now Israel is fighting on 7 fronts, and it has to finish Rafah before anything really happens with Lebanon. Israel is not likely to do any preemptive strikes on Lebanon before Gaza is under control. However, at this point, once Rafah is completed, is considered pretty much like more than 70% inevitable. That for anybody who's not familiar with,
Shana, can you hear me? Can you mute everyone, please?
everybody can mute themselves.
Yeah,
Cynthia,
but there's a lot of noise.
Cynthia and Mom, could you maybe mute yourselves? That'd be great.
Thought I was muted.
That's okay. That's okay. Sorry, I was saying something about Hezbollah. Eric, what?
No, I was asking if when Gaza
Oh,
becomes less confrontational, you said now are you thinking that Israel would go into Lebanon just because they have to keep the north clear? Is that it?
100%. So, sorry, I don't know where the sound is coming from because let me mute everybody. Okay, so right now what's happening in the north is tit for tat. There's been no escalation on Israel's side, but there have been some significant escalations on Hezbollah's side, including, so 2 days ago, Hezbollah had an unprecedented attack wherein they shot 3 missiles from a drone from within Israeli airspace. This is the first time that an attack has occurred within Israeli airspace. And much like what Iran did about a month ago, I think they knew full well that they weren't going to make any real gains from shooting 300 or sending 300 drones, missiles, and a variety of other things to Israel, so much as a show of force to say, guys, we've got the capabilities. I was, by the way, everybody knows it was a very big success on Israel's part that night, and also that countries like Jordan and Saudi Arabia joined in to help with the defense and also to open their airspace with Israel, which was unprecedented. A lot of what's going on in the background is not what you're hearing in the foreground. Believe me, these other Arab nations also want and need to see Iran defeated. So that being said, though it was a huge success, for those of you who don't know, that one night when Iran unleashed on Israel cost Israel $1 billion. Okay. Now, when we hear the number 1, it always sounds like a small number. Okay. That's billion with a B. What would you do with $1 billion? Okay. Israel is not America. Okay. $1 billion is a lot of money, especially when President Biden is threatening to stop sending arms to them that they need. Now, let me just say really quickly, whatever you're hearing in the media about what Biden is or is not giving with these 2,000, you hear about 2,000, 5,000, or $10,000, I wish they were dollar, pound bombs. And people are like, well, nobody needs a bomb that big. Right? These are ones that create tremendous craters in the ground, create tremendous destruction. These are civilian infrastructures we're talking about. No one needs those bombs. I see Pam smiling. I know she knows why we need those bombs, and I know a lot of you do. When you have tunnels.
The tunnels.
Exactly. That are so far underground, you need a 2,000 pound or more bomb to hit the tunnels. The entire Hamas infrastructure is underground. This is why we need these bombs, and we need the U.S. to support them. Now, guys, let me say, when it comes to advocacy, again, if you guys need help with the organizations to get involved with, to sign the petitions, I understand thinking like, oh, my signature doesn't mean anything. You know what? The truth is your signature does not mean anything. But if 1 million people who think their signature doesn't mean anything take 1 second to sign a petition, all of a sudden your signature does mean something. Again, you don't have to be a social media influencer to make a difference. And again, like if I just love this quote so much, but if you don't preach to the choir does not sing. I don't care if you're only talking to your children, your grandchildren, your next door neighbor. If somebody will listen, talk. And I think that some of you like missed, and guys, if you don't know where to get these, contact me. I'll give you the link for that as well. The people who are familiar with what's going on, you know, they give you a little fist bump, they give you a little like, yeah, you know, we're on the same team. But more than anything, and it's very big, it's a conversation piece for people who don't know what it is. Because you'll be talking to somebody and they're like, what is that thing you're wearing around your neck? And it's an opportunity to open a door. We're not going to change the minds. And when I think I mean, I don't know where you all stand on this. I'm talking about whoever's on, you know, whatever is supporting Israel at this time. We're not going to change the minds of the person calling for jihad at Harvard. Now, don't get me started on the implications of that. But, you know, I talked to, many of you know, Elia, my niece, about her friends at UCLA. And the truth is, most of them, and you hear horrific things about UCLA. And if you haven't been on my Facebook and seen what I posted about being at the UCLA I mean, it's as horrifying as you hear. I mean, it's not anymore. But according to her, most of her friends, like, it's not even on their radar. She's like, I don't even know if they know that there was a war or that 10/7 happened. I mean, which isn't like completely out of the ordinary. I remember when I was in college just being so separate from the news, thinking I wouldn't have known about the big earthquake in '92 in San Francisco had it not happened during the World Series. I mean, like, college kids, like, you want to think that they're like so smart and so in tune. And the truth is, they live in a bubble, and right now they're living in a bubble with teachers who are indoctrinating them to believe that hate is love. We live in a 1984 alternate universe where the programming is leading everyone, and the programming has just no real basis in reality. Are there any other questions that I can
Shana, are you familiar with the WhatsApp, which shows you all the petitions you can sign to help Israel?
I think I signed every single petition. I'm on so many WhatsApp groups, but Eric, please feel free to put that in the chat, or even better, if you could message me so I could.
Yeah, I'll message you.
Yeah, and then I could share
There's a
that.
WhatsApp that just pulls all the petitions together in one place.
Perfect.
every
Yeah.
day.
Send me that link and I could share that. Thank you.
Okay.
Guys, AIPAC also, no matter what you think, good, bad, or indifferent about them, they are the only organization out there right now that is fighting for the U.S.-Israel alliance. Incredibly important. Also, if you are politically involved, AIPAC supports or has a page that shows all of the pro-Israel candidates. If you give through AIPAC, the candidate gets 100% of your donation, but it also sends a message to that candidate that you're supporting them because they support the U.S.-Israel alliance. Guys, I can't explain enough how important bipartisanship is in this fight right now. It's so funny how many people assume that I'm a Republican because I support Israel. It's not just funny, it's sad, right? Funny and sad. Because I'm actually independent. I have been for a very long time. But the second that being pro-Israel becomes a Republican platform only, it means that 50% of the time, in the most dangerous of times, we will have a nation that is against Israel. And that is a reality that we cannot live with. The U.S.-Israel relationship, by the way, the alliance is strategic, not just for Israel. We are not just helping Israel. You have to understand how important the U.S.-Israel alliance is for America, not just for security cooperation, intelligence cooperation, biotech cooperation, water cooperation. But if you guys don't know, obviously we send many billions of dollars to Israel. First of all, 100% of that goes to defense. Okay, there's nothing just to like, feel good stuff to help Israel or even to help their economy. 100% goes to defense. Now, where are those defense dollars spent? By treaty, A minimum of 75% of all aid that America gives to Israel, a minimum of 75% has to be spent on US defense companies. Okay? So what does that mean? It means you cancel these defense contracts and it's going to cost America hundreds of thousands of jobs. It's going to hurt our economy tremendously. It's going to take billions of dollars out of the economy. And remember that if we just want to talk economics for just a second, money trickles down. Okay. It doesn't mean that, Boeing gets, $3 billion and that's the end of the story. It means their employees get it. Their employees buy cars. The car company builds more cars. The people sell more, like people buy more parts. Like there's a trickle down. There's a whole economy that's based just on the US-Israel relationship. And know that those dollars are not dollars wasted. I also can't emphasize enough, if anything that you hear does not land well with you about Israel, and I'm not going to say, oh, Israel's perfect. I'd love to say Israel's perfect. I'm not going to say it. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. But if something doesn't land well, try to find the true story. And if you can't try to find the true story, ask me. There's also something online now called AI for Israel. I know that a lot of people don't like AI, but literally you type in like the anti-Israel thing and they will give you the actual facts of what's going on. There's just too much fiction right now. And it's very, very important that we know the facts. One of the reasons that people don't speak up is because they don't know what to say. The other reason people don't speak up is because they're afraid. So let me ask you this, like, is the person who is against Israel afraid to speak up? Because they should not only be afraid, they should be embarrassed. They should be embarrassed to be supporting Hamas. I mean, it's a terrorist organization. And for anybody who out there who says, oh, I just care about the poor people of Gaza, I get it. I get it. Do you care about the Uyghurs, the 2 million Uyghurs that China killed or put into concentration camps and tortured? Do you care about that? Do you care about the 300,000 Syrians that were killed? Do you care that in the war on terror, the United States had 440,000 civilian casualties? Can you name one war that doesn't involve Israel that was quantified by civilian casualties? Can you name one? No, the only other war, like in recent American history, probably in American history, that was quantified by deaths was the Vietnam War, where we paid attention to how many soldiers were dead for the same reason as Israel. We wanted to know, if our friends and family who were fighting in Vietnam had made it through the day. It's not the same thing. It's not even a rational statistic. Are you guys all aware that very, very quietly about a week ago, the United Nations cut the number of women and children who were killed in collateral damage?
50%.
50%. Nobody's talking about that, but
It's not on nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, very quietly, the United Nations, you could go on their site. I'm not making this up. This is the official United Nations site. Oh, never mind. There's half as many. Who's talking about that?
Well, just to be clear, because I was on a conference call about this, what the UN said is they can only identify 50% of the ones they mentioned. They didn't say it didn't happen, and that's why they won't come out and be more forced. They just say they can only identify, and then they give a clause like in times of war, you can't identify, sometimes more than 50%. They're not claiming that the number was wrong. They're saying they can only identify only 50% of those people.
Okay, but
And
Eric,
that's their garbage. Yeah.
Sure, but here's the problem. Why is everyone taking Hamas's numbers at face value when by all accounts, listen to any of the war experts, listen to John Spencer and Richard Kemp in particular, okay? John Spencer from West Point, Richard Kemp from the British Army, both have zero skin in the game, and both will tell you over and over again that Israel is the most humane army in the history of the world, by far, by far. But let's say, Eric, that that's true, which it is, I guess. Why are we taking Hamas's figures at face value in the first place. They're made.
Well,
numbers.
yeah, and there's another thing that's not being disclosed. I don't know if you heard it, but there's a book, and I can get you. It's only in Hebrew right now, but they're trying to get it translated. There was a colonel in the Israeli army who just wrote a book about his 6 months in Gaza.
It doesn't
And what he wrote in it, because he actually speaks pretty good English. He was interviewed, is the first thing Israel learned is to find out where the doctors live, because all the doctors were high up in the Hamas administration. You cannot be a doctor in Gaza without Hamas's support. You have to be like a believer of Hamas. And they found that all the houses that the doctors live in were like headquarters of where the tunnels went and where the supplies were. And that's why they put the command and control underneath hospitals, because it's a very friendly environment, because the doctors are all pro-Hamas. And then when you see things out of these hospitals, or you don't hear about Israelis being in these hospitals because they lie, it's because these guys are also pro-Hamas. This is where and the media tends to trust doctors, so they're getting a bunch of garbage from the doctors in Gaza, and that's something also.
Yeah. The depth of the propaganda and lies is so extraordinary. So thank you, Eric. Eric is also like very, very involved. Dad, did you have a question, or are you talking to Jane? I guess he's talking to Jane. Do you have a question, Dad?
No, that's just a local conversation.
Okay.
I'll mute myself.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Because I do want to end on a high note. Yes.
How do I send you the WhatsApp link? It's not my WhatsApp, so I don't know how to do that.
Ask someone in WhatsApp for the link. Cynthia, if you have a question, you got to unmute. Sorry, I muted you because there was some noise coming from your. Can't hear you. You got to unmute. No. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, cool. So one last thing I do want to share with you, and I hope that this puts a huge smile on your face.
What about now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you just made a really huge point about, we need bipartisan support. I mean, we have to have the support of America, at least, preferably the rest of the world. And in this 6-month journey, and obviously I bother you every single day with my hysteria of something that I encountered, when I was at my book club the other night, I actually, the topic came up. It was mixed company. I wasn't planning for it to come up. And the conversation veered to, well, Netanyahu and that right-wing government. And I feel that it is so dangerous to associate like that right wing and, with the badness of Hamas, right? Like the two governments are the same. The Israeli people are good. The Gazan civilians are good. It's just the governments are bad. And again, this simplification. But I have come to understand that the reason why there doesn't seem to be any empathy for Israel, whether it's the hostages, whether what it's go through, whether, well, yeah, they died, but look at poor Gaza, look at poor Gaza. That is all that anybody, even so many Jewish people that from, my group, progressive liberals, well, somehow or other, they deserve it because, well, they did steal the land. They stole the land. Land is everything. They kicked them off. What do you expect? And it ends there. And no matter what I try to say, no matter how I try to educate, it's, well, look at how they live. There is, and we know this reverse. I mean, can't we just flood the media with this major sentence? We didn't kick off these 700,000 people. Well, they left. There was a war, right? Or just exchange it. Well, there were 1 million Jewish Arabs. No one's talking about them. They've never recovered. It's like this original sin, right? So there was an original sin that the Jews killed Christ. And frankly, till about 1967, I think that was, or 69, a lot of the anti-Semitism in America. God, if you learn in parochial school that these bad people killed your God, right? It's pretty bad. And when the Vatican came forward and said, look, the Jews didn't kill Christ. And it changed. I feel that then the rest of my life in my 20s and onward, I didn't have the anti-Semitism I had as a child, because, oh, at least we didn't kill Christ. How do we didn't kick them off. How do we get people to understand that the Palestinian leaders have to come forward and tell the truth, and they're not going to tell the truth? And we have archives. I have peeled through in these 6 months, everything, from the virtual Jewish learning. I mean, and, even going back 100 years before, how the reality is these Arabs did not, they were trying to kill the Jews even 100 years before it became a state. And just all the insanity between World War I and World War II and all the behind the scenes stuff going on. And it is just, I feel like we can never have peace if people emotionally somehow associate the Jewish people with this, for some reason, this colonialism is so horrible as a Jew. Now, we're Americans. I mean, most of our ancestors were not here when we conquered America. But, evidently we have forgiven America or the rest of the world for conquering an entire indigenous population. And nobody talks about the fact that, France occupied Syria, and all of these countries were chopped up. Like, it wasn't just Israel, or it wasn't just Palestine. So yes, we can say, well, because the Jews are always the scapegoats. Well, because in every generation, everybody needs a scapegoat and everything is always the Jews' fault. But I mean, to just keep living this over and over. We have been fighting the same war over and over and over. Like, with all of our technology, with all of our brilliance, can we not just, if you want to hate a Jew, but don't do it because you think the, Israelis came with some huge army and kicked off these poor innocent people. Like, I just feel like that's the Jews killed Christ thing.
Well, first of all, Cynthia, I know how passionate you are about this, and I know how much you have researched and come up to speed on this in a tremendous way. I give you so much credit for how deep into this you've gone. Let me start with the Netanyahu argument, which is that we don't have a Netanyahu government. We have a coalition government. So already that conversation is a non-starter. So second of all, as I said to you, if somebody says that they have a problem with right-wing Netanyahu, what they mean is they don't understand the concept of right wing. That's just sort of like their whole spectrum of understanding is 2 words. So ask specific questions. If somebody has a problem, ask specific questions. What policy in specific do you have an issue with? 99% of the time, they have no answer. Just like when I put a camera in the face of one of these people at UCLA who literally yelled, "We love the Jews."
I remember that.
And the next sentence was, "There is only one solution, Intifada revolution." The next sentence. And ask these people, and the truth is they have no idea what they're saying. They have no idea why they're saying it. So that's the first thing I would say, is ask open-ended questions. What specifically are you talking about? Cynthia, you're very well versed. So once they tell you specifically what they're talking about, which I can pretty much guarantee will be nothing, then you're going to have answers.
They are coming up. The one I get a lot is, well, look at they then flip it back to the West Bank. Well, look at the West Bank, and look at those settlers, and there and even that, I went on to camera.org to really understand what the settlers are doing, and that's a whole other thing. I mean, you've got a few renegades, but you don't have, from what I understand, there's not a whole lot of people that are being violent and horrific and trying to kick people off. I mean, I thought it was like land that nobody was using when the settlers came.
Okay, so I don't want to get too far into this, but if you look at UN resolutions, I believe it's 242 and 339, both of these resolutions that speak about the West Bank, if you actually go back to the actual text, in the best of all possible worlds, the West Bank, which by the way is otherwise known as Judea and Samaria, the actual bread basket where Judaism began, thousands of years before Islam even existed. So to say that it wasn't our land is ridiculous. But these resolutions in their actual text, legal text, say one of two things. If you use a like very specific interpretation, the land of Judea Samaria actually belongs to Israel. If you use the loose interpretation that everybody seems to prefer right now, the best you come up with is that it's disputed land. There's literally nothing within the resolution that grants any land to the quote unquote Palestinian people. Keep in mind that Israel also unilaterally left Gaza, literally ripping Jewish people from their homes to give them this strip of land in exchange for peace. Within days, the Intifada began. That in response to this gesture, Hamas thought, actually, I don't even think it was Hamas back then, the Palestinians thought an appropriate response would be to kill Jews wherever you could find them. So if you want to find out what's going on in the West Bank, again, ask them specifically, what is the incident and what happened before that incident? I wish that we could control every single person. Unfortunately, we can't. There's going to be rogue actors, even, in the Jewish, the Christian, even I assume somewhere in the Buddhist community, you're going to have people who are going to do stuff. And as Jews, we sort of hold this collective responsibility for each other, which is both beautiful and very harmful at the same time. Because when one Jew does something bad, it reflects poorly on everybody. If you could imagine every single non-Jew in jail being reflected on their entire community, it's hard to even imagine. Keep in mind also, we're very small in number. So when you ask about like the social media issues, the Jews in the world are 1/5 of 1% of the world. That's 0.02%, not even 1% of the world. We're 2% of America, and we already account for more than 50% of all hate crime against us. But at 0.02% of the world versus 2 billion Muslims, and I'm not saying they're all anti-Israel or anti-Semitic. In fact, we've had some allies who have really, Yosef Haddad, the most vocal among them, and also, of course, the Green Prince has been amazing. They're far between. When you have massive numbers speaking against us, it's very hard to win that war of words, unfortunately. That being said, guys, for anybody who's in tech, I posted this. There's something called the Adir competition going on right now, which is to create like technological programming with me, AI, it's mostly AI based, to fight anti-Semitism and build a more pro-Semitic dialogue online. There were hundreds or thousands of applicants. I did not win the first round, but they did invite me to the next round. I need somebody who knows how to program, and also anybody is welcome to join the Adir competition. I believe the prize is actually $1 million. It's not like, I know it's $1 million, but I don't know if one person is getting $1 million or if it's going to be divided up. It's no joke. So people are taking this very seriously.
So anybody who has a skill in programming, but
AI.
also has something to there are things that I would like to say, but that I think could be helpful. I don't have a programming, like my cousin has that. So can I give him I don't care about the winning. I just want a message.
Yeah.
If I gave him what to say, let's say, or what I think, he could. Okay.
Sure. I mean, it's a pretty involved competition, but you've seen the post, so you could just go to competition.com, I believe, and you can see the information. Guys, there are a lot of people who are very involved and very much trying to fight this war of words. It's a hard war to win, honestly, because this tiny vocal minority is getting 100% of the media coverage, and it paints a picture that's not only non-realistic, but is extraordinarily violent, threatening to our democracy. Does anybody have any other questions? Because I do want to show one super positive thing before we finish off. So I'm going to go back to the screen share for one moment. So one of the things that we did while we were in Beersheba, actually, this is me at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, pretending that I'm actually talking. I wasn't, but and with no chin. I don't even know what that was about. But while we were in Beersheba, there's an organization that's called Special in Uniform. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, what it does is it gives children with special needs, mostly Down syndrome and autism, the ability to serve in the IDF. Now, that might not seem like a great honor to you, but in a nation that takes a tremendous pride in service, it's been like a very sad thing, particularly for children who have siblings who are so proud to be in the IDF. One of the things a Special in Uniform do is they created a Special in Uniform band. And I just want to share, let's pick one song, the joy that these kids brought and how they not just presented themselves, but really they would come around and talk to everybody. And this might take a second to load, unfortunately. Let me just give it 1 second. You'll see so there were 6 singers, and Andy Beck is the drummer guy. They're so wonderful, and they actually are amazing musicians, and they walked around, they talked to us, and they all told us how proud they were to serve, and it was so beautiful. I need to share the sound too on this one. How do I do that? How do I share the sound too? Do you know, Brad?
Share the one.
Yeah, you share. Oh, advanced sharing options. Sorry. Shoot. Hold on 1 second, guys. I gotta get the sound on. Otherwise, it's not going to be worth much. Sharing options. Why? Before it was giving me the option to share the sound. Oh, here. Sorry. Computer audio. Okay. If you guys can't hear this, please let me know.
How are you? So my name is Leah, and I sing in this band, and I love you so much. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Be'er Sheva. My name is Doron Naor.
Sorry. Share screen. Basic. I do. I have desktop, computer audio. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, guys. Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. We don't have to watch the whole
I'm 22 years old, and I am lead singer in Special in Uniform. Thank you for coming.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adi Yehuda. I'm a singer at Special in Uniform, and I am so proud to be a voice and an example to the success of the Special in Uniform program. Alongside 1,000 soldiers, we serve in the army in many different bases, doing a remarkable and important work for the Israel Defense Forces. By taking our part in this national duty, we are aimed to raise awareness for individuals with special needs and promote inclusion within Israel society.
Hello everyone, my name is Noah. I'm singing in Dorim B'Madim band. I'm so very happy glad to be here today.
Hello everyone, my name is Oad. I am 19 years old, and I'm very happy to be with you.
Hello. Hello everyone, and guess what? I finished my army today. I'm performing to you. My name is Rob, I'm 22 years old. I'm a drummer in a Special Uniform band, and guess what? I finished my army!
In the army.
רוצה עוד ספר את הסיפור שלך. יש לך אחד יפה, וכל הכאבים והחולשות שלך הפכו אותך אחד כזה שלא מפחד ליפול, שלא מפחד לגדול.
אתה ותרגל את הניגון שלך, יש לך אחד יפה, יש לך אחד יפה. תראה כאילו העולם שם בשבילך, תראה הלב כבר מתרפא, רק אל תפחד ליפול, רק אל תפחד לגדול. כל עוד לא הפסקת לחלום, אתה מנסה
קח מכל צייר את הציור שלך, יש לך אחד יפה.
יש לך אחד יפה. אין שום דבר שיעצור אותך, תפליט לאן שאת תמצא, רק אל תפחד לבחור, רק אל תפחד לבחור. כל עוד לא הפסקת לחלום, אתה מנסה
Okay. I'm going to leave it at that. There was not a dry eye in the house after these kids performed. It is really quite remarkable. I hope that everybody has like the same pride that these children have in who we are as a nation, and even for those who don't understand, to know that we are on the right side of history because our goal is peace and we come from a place of love. And I know that's hard to understand in the face of such destruction and sadness right now. But to know the Jewish heart and the Jewish soul is to know our intentions, and our intentions are pure. Please keep the hostages in your hearts. I know that it seems very far away, not just physically, but time-wise. For anyone who lives in LA, I bought a bunch of like, oh, that's not it. This is it. Bring them home bracelets that I'm happy to get to you. You could get dog tags. They're not expensive. They're like 10 or 20 bucks. It's not expensive. And you could get the t-shirts, but anything that you can do, please, please just speak. If nothing else, just keep talking, keep remembering, and keep praying. I do believe our prayers ultimately make a difference. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. I know that was super long. If you have any questions forthgoing, you know where to find me. I will be posting the recording on Facebook if there's anyone you know who might benefit from seeing all or part of this. If there's no other questions, I'm going to say shalom, chaverim, and lahitraot. Good to go? Okay.
Thank you very much, Shana.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Shana.
You're
We'll
welcome.
see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody who showed up. I appreciate the
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Good night.
Okay. Bye-bye.